we've got this really important information that's really top secret, super secret. Well, what is it? Well, it says that there's collusion. Where'd it come from? It's classified, okay? Where did it come from? Hillary Clinton, from her campaign. And they just hid it because they're such criminals.
And authored by a foreigner, they briefed the president on that, leak it to the press, and thereby give it credibility. And then they were off and running. They had established the predicate. They'd given a reason to have the whole Mueller investigation and to undermine President Trump's first term. So Jim Comey deserves whatever the Justice Department has found to go after him. If it's obstruction or if it's lying to, 18 USC 1001 lying to Congress, I think all that is warranted. God bless the Justice Department for holding someone accountable who started it all 10 years ago.
James Comey has lawyered up. You can see this guy entered his appearance called Patrick Joseph Fitzgerald. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about it. He's a former U.S. attorney, but we also have some reaction on this development that Comey is now indicted. We have John Brennan, who also sounds pretty dang nervous out there. And so we'll see where this pattern of indictments goes, but we can expect more to come. That's according to J.D. Vance and others. Roger Stone had an arrest date at 6 a.m. in the morning outside of his house. He asks the very pertinent question. James Comey and I were charged with the exact same crimes. Exactly. Why did 29 heavily armed FBI agents storm my home at 6 a.m. in the morning to arrest me after tipping off CNN, while James Comey still has not voluntarily surrendered for his arrest and has until October 9th to do so? Well, we know why. Because James Comey and the FBI were highly weaponized, and the Trump DOJ is being markedly reserved for whatever reason. Here's the application for admission pro hoc vice. This is a foreign attorney who wants to come in and represent, there he is, James Comey, criminal former FBI director. This attorney, solo practitioner, not with a law firm as it stands right now, and he's been with some big law firms, but solo right now. He's got a Gmail address. There's his P.O. box. He's been around a bunch of other districts: Southern District of New York, Eastern District of New York, Northern District of Illinois, Southern District of Illinois, Western District of Michigan, Eastern District of Wisconsin, and the Northern District of Indiana. But not, apparently, the Eastern District of Virginia, which is where James Comey is because he was testifying remotely back during COVID from this location. He says, all right, I know I'm not a licensed attorney here. Full admission can come later. He confirms, I've not been reprimanded. Nobody is saying there's any problems with my character or fitness. I've read the rules, and I certify that within 90 days that I will have read the rules and be familiar with the local court things and all that stuff. So he says, this is my signature coming in. The person vouching for him right here, Jessica Carmichael, all of that comes in. All right, so who is this dude? Patrick Fitzgerald, the current attorney representing James Comey, is this fella. Former U.S. attorney of Northern District of Illinois and former partner and an American attorney. He was, for a decade, U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, served as U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, that's Maureen Comey land, and chief of the Organized Crime Terrorism Unit. From 1995, he prosecuted Osama bin Laden, golly, Omar Abdel Rahman, and Ramzi Youssef. He was also special counsel for the Justice Department, was former prosecutor in charge of the Valerie Plame affair with Dick Cheney. As a federal prosecutor, also led a number of high-profile investigations, including Rod Blagojevich, remember him, which he says is a total scam. So he prosecuted him, and George Ryan, Conrad Black, Richard Daley, and others. Born Roman Catholic, father also named Patrick, attended Our Lady of Help Christian School, then went to Harvard. So he married Jennifer. They have 2 children. After practicing law, became a U.S. attorney, and more. He was appointed, was there for a while, joined private practice. Then in 2023, he retired, and now he's representing James Comey. Began serving as defense counsel, defending him against 2 charges, and of course, we'll see more from him. Now, here was the criminal cover sheet for James Comey, and not much too interesting here. James Comey is not a juvenile, believe it or not, despite posting juvenile things. James Comey is his name. He's white, born 1960, U.S., not in custody, got an attorney. So Jessica Carmichael was number 1. She's got a bar number. Prosecutor is Lindsay Halligan. What's up, Lindsay? FBI special agent is Miles L. Starr. Counts 1 and 2, we've got false statements here. And then counts 3 is obstruction for the felony. Digital signature of Lindsay Halligan hits the docket. So James Comey got a summons. Of course, we saw that. Roger Stone pointing this out. He has to appear October 9th at 10 a.m. Apparently not going to get raided by the FBI. Proof of service. I delivered copies to James Comey's lawyer. James Comey, what a nice little situation this is for James. His lawyer gets to help himself surrender. I delivered a copy of the summons to James Comey. James better show up on October 9th, which is is a nice thing. I don't know why he's not being raided and hauled in. Or yeah, you should wait till he gets on an airplane and they can get him on the tarmac and put him in leg shackles like they did for Peter Navarro. So he got the summons. That's a copy delivered, and he is due back in court in October. Now, some reaction to all this. Here is Lindsey Graham on the Comey indictment.
Here's the question for the system. On August the 3rd of 2016, just over a month after opening Crossfire Hurricane, there was a meeting that we now know took place in the White House where the CIA director told Comey, President Obama, and others that there's intel that this whole storyline about Trump colluding with the Russians may have come from the Clinton campaign. That's pretty stunning information,
yes,
I would suggest.
It is, Lindsey.
In September 2016, just a couple of months, less than a little over a month later, Comey gets an investigative lead memo from the intelligence community saying we have intelligence that the Clinton campaign has signed off on a plan to link Trump to Russia to avoid the scrutiny of the email server problem she had. Here's my question. What did the FBI do to verify that lead? Did they open up an investigation once they were told there's intelligence that Clinton may be behind this? I've written a letter to Kash Patel.
No, they didn't do that, Lindsey. They shoved it off into a classified annex and they kept it all compartmentalized so nobody knew what it was. But then they would say, well, we've got this really important information that's really top secret, super secret. Well, what is it? Well, it says that there's collusion. Where'd it come from? It's classified. Okay. Where did it come from? Hillary Clinton from her campaign. And they just hid it because they're such criminals. So here's more of Lindsey.
And I want to know what Comey did after being told twice that the intelligence community suspected this was Hillary Clinton's campaign, not Trump colluding with the Russians.
We already know they covered it up, they hid it, and they continue to weaponize their offices to take out their political opponent. Now, Trump gave some conversation to NBC News, and they say from the president, I think Christopher Wray's coming next. So Comey, Chris Wray, both FBI directors. Chris Wray also in on a lot of this, saying Trump in an exclusive interview with NBC News accused FBI former director of Christopher Wray of inappropriate behavior and said he would think, I don't know, but I would imagine, said the president, I would certainly imagine, I would think they are doing that. Trump said in a phone call when asked whether the Justice Department should investigate Chris Wray. Trump accused him of wrongdoing in the interview, saying Wray, who resigned at the end of the Biden administration, did a terrible job and we just found out about it. Wray did Roger Stone. I think it's very inappropriate what he did. And I think a lot of his service was very inappropriate, says Trump. But we haven't gone beyond that. Don't forget, we just found out about all of these FBI agents being there. The comment about being there was in reference to the 274 agents that were there just prior to and during the J6 hoax. Last week, Blaze Media said, yeah, there were 274 plainclothed agents there. Trump said that they were probably acting as agitators and insurrectionists. They were not acting as law enforcement officials. Yeah, and if they all came, let's say there's, a few dozen undercover plainclothes agents or whatever, could they have stopped it? Could they have said, hey, we're agents, stop this, back up, right? Cordoned off and prevented it from happening? Or were they there just kind of like going with the crowd? Hey, crowd's going in there. We got to monitor the crowd. And so they're actively, enabling it by being a part of it. The Post also directly called out Wray, saying he's got some major explaining to do. Wray hasn't commented about the recent allegations, probably still on vacation with his family. There is no evidence that undercover FBI agents were there, says NBC News. Okay, yeah, there's no evidence. There's no evidence at all that there were any undercover FBI officers. They stipulated to it in the Proud Boys trial. These people are the worst liars. A report by the Justice Department Inspector General concluded the same. The FBI stipulated that they had sources. Now, again, they're so sneaky with words. Undercover FBI officers. What the hell does that even mean? Do they even call themselves officers? No, they call themselves special agents. Were there any undercover special agents there? Well, we don't know, but there are no officers there. Okay, that's how they get around this crap. There were feds all over the place. On Saturday evening, Kash Patel gave a different description of the agency's role, and he also criticized them. He said 274 agents were thrown into crowd control on January 6th against FBI standards. Yeah, before, you could have crowd control before the people even arrived at the Capitol building, right? Trump was given the speech. FBI could have said, oh my gosh, we got a bunch of people here, a lot more. Activate yourselves. We need all these people coming down here. You're activated. Then people march on down. Now there's feds in the crowd. Then, event ultimately happens after they're shooting people in the face with paintball guns. But he told Fox News, he said, agents were sent into a crowd control mission after the riot was declared by Metro Police. That's what Kash says. So that's something that goes against FBI standards. So it sounds like those 274 came after things started to get unruly. A senior FBI official with knowledge, said that the blaze was completely and utterly untrue. It's the same thing that Just the News was reporting as well, too. I know of no agents who were authorized to be in the crowds observing the constitutionality, said one official. Anonymously, okay. Another FBI director, James Comey, was indicted last week. Comey's denied any wrongdoing, but hopefully Tisch and Pencilneck are also getting indictments soon. Other Trump officials in recent weeks and months have hinted at other people. J.D. Vance said certainly there will be more indictments coming over the next 3.5 years in the Trump administration. Trump also spoke about directing Hegseth to send troops to Portland, and that apparently is already underway. So, some side-by-sides from the Democrats who loved when Trump was being indicted, but who hate it when one of their people's being indicted. Here is Amy Klobuchar talking about the safeguards of American justice, as long as it's President Trump. But if it's some other grand jury that indicts James Comey, suddenly this is a weaponization of society by a dictator fascist.
I don't have all the evidence. This is going to be up to the Justice Department to make a decision about what happened here. I will say in America, we know, as a great man once said, the law is king, the president isn't king. And I would add to that, the former president isn't king. Everyone has to follow the law.
As a former prosecutor.
Yeah, and so does the FBI director.
Myself, this is weaponizing the Justice Department. She assured me that politics would not play a role, that they would make independent decisions. That is not what this is. This is a vengeance prosecution.
No, it's not.
It is not about the law.
There's plenty of law. You guys went after Roger Stone. You guys raided his house. And now the same thing is happening to James Comey, except one person in this case is actually guilty, James Comey. And we're excited to see more twisting into pretzels from the Democrats. Here's another one, and this is just a great freeze frame to start this clip because he looks nervous. Here's John Brennan, one of the worst in America. And new questions about this dude and his involvement in 9/11, if you missed the Tucker Carlson 9/11 series. He says John Brennan was over there in Syria or something, approving the passports for these people to come into our country, which begs the question, what was that about? But Brennan then became CIA director and was colluding with Obama, Comey, Clapper, and the rest of them to rig an outcome of an election. They wanted to say that Trump was illegitimate, that the Russians had come in and colluded to steal the election, and they created an intelligence operation to try to create that coup. And here is now some justice being returned their direction.
You know, I don't see any case against me. I have looked back on all of my actions and decisions.
All right, case closed. So that's John Brennan. He's innocent. He analyzed himself and has discovered that he's an innocent man, and there's nothing to even look at. Thanks for your attention.
And with John Durham, the special counsel, and others that have looked at what we did, it was certainly consistent with our legal authority.
Yeah, and how much of the classified annex did John Durham have or discuss with us? How many of the FBI investigations into themselves and into the leakers never made it to these reports, at least publicly? We're learning about all of this stuff in the aftermath because Tulsi Gabbard is now releasing it. These dudes had this stuff buried so deep in their annexes that nobody could find them. And now it's all coming out.
And with the law. So I don't know what, they're referring to there. Individuals who used to work in the government, even if their security clearances were revoked, they could be subpoenaed. They could be, called to provide testimony in support of whatever allegations they have. I don't see a case there.
Okay, well, he can explain that to his cellmate as soon as he gets indicted. Here's more. James Comey's son-in-law apparently threw a hissy fit and resigned. After James Comey got indicted, Nick Sorter says his son-in-law, who prosecuted J6ers, has resigned. He's probably going to go call Maureen Comey and be like, hey, you want to get a coffee together and talk about how we lost our jobs? This trash is taking itself out indeed. Troy Edwards, Deputy Chief, National Security Section, is now gone by. He writes this to Lindsay Halligan. Hey, dear Lindsay, to uphold my oath to the Constitution and country, I hereby resign as an Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, effective immediately. Good. Sounds like he's got a pretty big conflict of interest there. Troy, he'll go get a job at some lefty firm or dedicate his life to James Comey or something. But it's perfect. This is the type of purge that we want. They can take themselves out. Here is real Anna Paulina Luna talking about James Comey, saying he better lawyer up. He now has a lawyer. He's probably going to get more lawyers. And here's what she had to say.
I think he's going to have to lawyer up. I've been encouraging the DOJ, and I think that they need to arrest someone. We know that there's been a lot of laws broken and people's civil liberties violated. What he's facing is a 5-year prison sentence, and I think that he deserves every bit of that. But I think oversight especially, Congress, as you know, Jason, has the ability to, if people lie to Congress, bring that inherent contempt charge if the DOJ is not going to act. And I think that that needs to be something put on the table. Now, I know specifically with his testimony that it's outside of the statute of limitation, if you will, for Congress, because we can only do it for the legislative timing every 2 years. But I do think that people need to be held accountable, and I think the American people want that as well.
That's right, Anna Paulina Luna. We do want accountability. And here is Jim Jordan. Of course, he's over on the Judiciary Committee. He was commenting about this, posted by Jim Jordan himself this morning.
Who are on the right, are conservative usually thinkers, are not too high on this case, are you?
No, I mean, look,
Andy McCarthy said he doesn't think it's a good indictment, and somebody dug up a bunch of old clips from Andy McCarthy and how kind of in love he is with the Justice Department and James Comey in particular.
I think if Jim Comey, if they believe he lied to Congress and he obstructed justice, let's move forward. What I do know is the things that Jim Comey has done that I think were wrong. I think he leaked classified information.
Yes.
I think he was pushing to do that.
Yes.
I think he went and set up Michael Flynn, back at the start of this administration. Remember when he talked about, he said, oh, well, we should have called the White House counsel, but we thought we could get away with it. So they go over and they set up the General Flynn. So Jim Comey's, I think, done all kinds of things wrong. And I remember when we deposed him, I mean, literally one of the most arrogant individuals I have ever been around. So, yeah, I think this is warranted. I think this is the right thing to do. And remember, this is when it all started. Back in 2016, after the election, before Inauguration Day, they changed the intelligence community assessment, Brian. Remember, this is what Tulsi Gabbard brought forward 9 weeks ago. Whistleblower came to her and said they had one intelligence community report. They changed that, and they made it sound much worse than it was to establish a predicate to start the Mueller investigation and go after President Trump. And what
I think it was even more than that. If they could have raced this through, they wanted to invalidate the election. They were seeding that to say, oh, it was illegitimate. The Russians interfered with the election. They couldn't get that done in time. They couldn't squeeze it through and come and concoct something before the inauguration ultimately. And so the next backup plan was to set up Michael Flynn and to create an entire hoax that really dogged his administration for the first 2 years to stall it out. And they were pretty successful in causing a bunch of political headache. We had to go through different AGs, remember like Jeff Sessions had to recuse himself and all this stuff because of their lawfare. And now they need to pay the price for the weaponization of the DOJ.
They really did is once they changed that report, Comey, Clapper, and Brennan all go up to Trump Tower on January 6, 2017. They briefed the president on the new change report that wasn't supported by the real underlying intelligence. They briefed him, and then Comey leaks the fact that they briefed the president on the dossier that they knew was false, the dossier that they knew was garbage, the dossier they knew was paid for by the Clinton campaign and authored by a foreigner. They briefed the president on that, leak it to the press, and thereby give it credibility. And then they were off and running. They had established the predicate. They'd given a reason to have the whole Mueller investigation and to undermine President Trump's first term. So Jim Comey deserves whatever the Justice Department has found to go after him. If it's obstruction or if it's lying to, 18 USC 1001 lying to Congress, I think all that is warranted. God bless the Justice Department for holding someone accountable who started it all 10 years ago.
And my sense is he won't be the last. And by the way, forget about Republican or Democrat.
Okay, we hope he's not the last because there are many other criminals who are out there. Fox News Sunday had J.D. Vance on, and here's what they asked him about Comey, Schiff, Tishy, Tish, and more indictments coming soon.
Well, there's certainly going to be more indictments coming over the next 3.5 years of the Trump administration, but we're always going to let the law drive this stuff and the facts of the case and not political motivations, which frankly makes us so much different from the Biden administration.
Yeah, and the law and facts are on our side, okay? The facts say that these people broke the law many times over, and they should be charged for it, and they will.
Where they indicted not just the President of the United States, but so many people who were just engaged in the basic job of politics, who were engaged in policymaking, who disagreed with the Biden administration, and because that they faced prosecution from that same administration. If you look at the Comey indictment, Martha, this was a grand jury indictment delivered in Alexandria, Virginia, not exactly a hotbed of Donald Trump's political support. There were 3 requested indictments. The grand jury returned 2 of those 3 indictments. So I think they showed they were judicious. I think that it showed clearly that there were a couple of things that James Comey did wrong. And to the people who are saying that this is all political, I mean, look, if you look at our track record in the Trump administration, there have been people who have been prosecuted, who have been political allies, who agree with our politics. There have been people who disagree with our politics. We're not letting politics drive this. We're letting the requirements of the justice system and the law drive this. And unfortunately for James Comey, when I look at this indictment, I see a guy who lied under oath. And he'll have his day in court. He'll have his opportunity to prove the other case in front of the jury. But the idea that this is driven by politics, I think is preposterous when you actually read the details of the indictment and the obvious fact that James Comey did lie under oath to Congress multiple times.
All right, we'll see where it goes.
We will, and we're looking forward to it. Now, James Comey is just hopefully the first domino. He was in the room for a lot of these meetings. He's being charged specifically for his testimony to Congress, but a lot of other people testified to Congress, and a lot of other people deserve their day in court. And if they want to exercise exercise their pardons or some sort of legislative immunity or executive privilege or whatever, then they can assert those claims, just like Bannon did, just like Navarro did, just like Trump had to do. And Comey, as they told us for years, is in the same boat as everybody else. No one is above the law.